This morning, State Senator Bryan Hughes on the new abortion bills now poised to pass the legislature. One more proposal even monitors sewage waste to see if Texas women are using the abortion pill. The ballot shockwave from last weekend's local elections. Why Republicans in Tarrant County lost 11 of the 11 seats they were going for. Political consultant Brian Mays on the reason the legislature now wants to move local elections from May to November. The Trump administration's new military zone in West Texas. Congressman Tony Gonzalez from the U.S. Capitol on what this will mean for his district. And with companies warning tariffs will bring higher prices, should Texans now expect to see empty shelves? Houston Mayor John Whitmire unveiled his plan to dig his city out of his financial hole, how he did it, and what he's not ruling out. Plus, the Democratic Party considering a rare move on Monday, whether to sanction Congressman Henry Cuellar and the consequences that could come with it.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Welcome to Inside Texas Politics. I'm Jason Whiteley. Let's begin this morning with some of the headlines that you might have missed over the last few days. Starting in South Texas, where 4 public officials face criminal indictments for vote harvesting. Charges like this are rare in Texas. This one happening in Frio County, just southwest of San Antonio. The county judge there faces 3 counts along with several other local officials. Vote harvesting is transporting completed absentee ballots from voters to election offices for money. The Texas Democratic Party is considering a rare move on Monday, formally punishing Congressman Henry Cuellar. Texas Democrats will vote on a resolution to sanction Cuellar for supporting a number of bills that the party does not. If passed, this would revoke resources from Cuellar and ban him from party events. He represents South Texas, and his office says he is focused on bipartisanship. And Houston Mayor John Whitmire has unveiled a brand new city budget to eliminate a big deficit, but he refused to rule out job cuts. Whitmire says this one's a balanced budget to close a $200 million deficit. Whitmire said his office has found inefficiencies, it's reorganized departments, and even got 1,000 city employees to voluntarily retire. Despite all the cuts, though, the mayor said Houstonians are not going to see a reduction in city services. Let's begin right now, though, with 2 abortion bills poised to pass the Texas legislature this month. One makes it easier for doctors to know when they can intervene in a troubled pregnancy. The other is Senate Bill 2880 and cracks down on the abortion pill. The Texas Senate has approved both of these bills, authored by State Senator Bryan Hughes from Mineola. You have Senate Bill 2880, which we just discussed there. You have Senate Bill 31, which we talked about before the session, which clarifies the language and lets medical providers know when they can intervene in a troubled pregnancy and actually perform an abortion for a mother. Both of these bills are poised to pass the legislature. Any doubt in your mind that they're not going to pass in the House?
We're very encouraged. Senate Bill 31, the Life of the Mother Act that you mentioned just now, that bill is all the way through the Senate. It's been through the House committee, and I believe it's on its way to the House floor. And as you know, every pro-life bill we've ever had in Texas always provided for the life of the mother. But after Roe versus Wade and after some national stories that were troubling to people, we had a few doctors that were not following the law, and moms who had medical emergencies were not being treated. So you're right, Senate Bill 31, which you've been covering for a long time, even before it had a bill number, that the pro-life groups came together with the medical groups. We can differ about a lot when it comes to abortion, but almost everyone agrees that the life of the mother has got to be protected. So we're excited about that bill. Senate Bill 2880, which goes after the poison abortion pill manufacturers and pushers. That bill is through the Senate. It's had a hearing in the House. We feel good about that bill as well.
Senate Bill 1976 would test sewage to look for signs of the abortion pill, mifepristone, and other drugs as well, too. This bill remains in committee, not moving like 2880 and 31 so far, at least. What's the purpose, though, Senator, of knowing whether Texans are using any of these drugs? You can't trace it back to anyone's house. What's the reason for it?
Of course not. You're right. There's no way that something showing up in wastewater would tell us where it specifically came from. That's no one would even try to do that. This bill was brought to us originally with that concern. Are there things in our water supply coming from the abortion pill, from other drugs? And we began to look at the issue. And so we put a number of different chemicals to be tested for in our bill. Every chemical we have in this bill is listed as dangerous, either by the European Environmental Agency or some even by California. It's hard to argue with finding out what's in the water. That's all this bill's about. And so we now are looking for it to be a study done through a university in Texas, which we want to know. I think anybody would want to know if there are dangerous chemicals wherever they come from. If there's dangerous chemicals in the water, we need to know about it.
So if the legislation doesn't pass, are you asking a university or some other group to do a study to look at the wastewater?
Yes, we're looking at work from the committee in the interim. We're looking at universities. There's a number of different approaches to do this. And as you've seen, many folks who've been interviewed about this, experts who don't have care one way or the other about the politics, they're saying, yeah, these are chemicals that we haven't been testing for. And it's hard to argue with finding out what's in the water.
Senator, you said that you would decide after the legislative session on whether you would run for Texas Attorney General. Your colleague, Senator Mays Middleton from Galveston, already in the race. If you decide this, how much money do you think it would take to run this statewide race?
Races are expensive in Texas today. So we've asked a number of people for advice on that, and we're talking about millions of dollars. As you know, unfortunately, that's where we are in politics.
Yeah.
And so that means folks will who share the values of a candidate have to get behind them, have to support them. So we've got a lot of encouragement to run. Right now, we're focused on the legislative session and the job we've been elected to and getting these bills passed. But right after the session, we'll be making a final decision on that. So it'll be an expensive race. And so it's going to require raising money and getting the support of people.
And as you weigh whether or not to run, what kind of difference do you think you could make at the Attorney General's office?
Attorney General Paxton has led the nation in pushing for conservative reforms, for fighting for the Constitution all around the country. If you're a Republican, you look to the Texas AG's office to make sure that our values and the Constitution is being protected. So that's the standard that's been set. That's important. We need someone who is aggressive, someone who has legal experience, and someone who's worked on these issues. And so we want to make sure that the focus doesn't change. And we make sure that the AG's office is doing its job, not just for Texas, but the whole country is looking to us as well.
And you check all those boxes. Is General Paxton an endorsement you would seek?
My understanding is that General Paxton would not be planning to endorse at this time because he has his own race.
Sure.
But again, look at the issues he's worked on, the issues we've worked on. I think folks will see that the things that matter to Texas are what we're going to focus on.
Senator, it is always good to talk to you, sir. Thank you for the time.
You're so kind to have me. Thanks, Ed.
All right, let's bring in the roundtable to talk about the politics of this. Bud Kennedy is here from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Ashley Godot is political director at KVUE in Austin, and Natalie Haddad is political reporter at WFAA in Dallas. Bud, let's start with you. And the last thing he said there about running for AG, that's a yes to me.
It's definitely a yes. And Senator Hughes, you can see there the political acumen he's got. The way he paused when you asked about Paxton's endorsement, he thought, well, you know, what's the pluses and minuses of this? He is considered the closest extension to Dan Patrick on the Senate floor. Somebody would carry out the way Dan Patrick does, either someday maybe as lieutenant governor or as AG.
And Ashley, I presume after the session is over at the beginning of June here, we're going to see quite a few others potentially putting their names in the race, in the hat for a number of races.
Absolutely. And, you know, I would venture to say that Senator Hughes isn't the only senator on the floor right now who's considering a run for Texas AG. There is a lot of buzz around the Capitol about who else could be considered, who else might want to throw their names in that hat. And so I think we're looking for an interesting and almost potentially contentious primary.
And I think so, Natalie, not just on the Republican side, but the Democratic side too, potentially.
Right. We mentioned a couple of names over the last few weeks, and to Ashley's point, I think contentious is the perfect word. I think we're going to see a couple of surprises too. To her point,
you think
again,
so?
I think so. To her point, the buzz around the Capitol, some that are open secrets, none not so much.
Right.
I think it's coming.
On the Democratic side or the Republican side is where we'll see surprises?
I think we're going to see some on the Democratic side, for sure.
Right. We'll be interested to see what happens with that. A lot more ahead here, including this. When we come back here, Congressman Tony Gonzalez from the U.S. Capitol and the message that voters sent in last weekend's local elections. Inside Texas Politics, back in a moment. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. President Trump now trying a new tactic to further reduce the trickle of people trying to enter this country illegally. He's taking Texas land and making it a military zone. The newest stretch is in part of Congressman Tony Gonzalez's district in far west Texas. We reached him about it at the U.S. Capitol. Congressman, welcome back to the program here. The military zone in El Paso, it stretches down into your district there. This is an extension of Fort Bliss, but any idea how wide, how long this is going to be, going all the way down there to Fort Hancock that you represent?
Yeah, Jason, thank you for having me. It's 63 miles. I actually spoke with the general that is in charge of Fort Bliss a few days ago, and we're in constant contact on it. What I will say is these military zones, this is the second one that they put up. You know, they did something similar in Arizona. They're working. They're essentially, the administration is using them as a deterrent, and they're, you know, anyone that you don't want to be caught in this military zone, if you will, because it's serious. It's a serious offense. But so far, it's working. Everything on the ground, all the operational stuff is humming along.
And the one in New Mexico is like 60 feet wide. How wide is this one? Any idea?
Yeah, it takes it from the center of the U.S.-Mexico border up into the shoreline. So a lot of that there is no private property. These were some of the concerns I had. Hey, are there any? Does it encompass any private property? Is it near any communities? Like where exactly is this? It's a 63-mile stretch, essentially from the center of the U.S.-Mexico border to the shoreline that covers area in kind of remote areas where there is no public property. That's the area that's been annexed, if you will.
Congressman, the president, though, by using the military, making this a military zone, he's sidestepping Congress and the laws that it enacted to prevent the military from enforcing civilian law. As a veteran, as a member of Congress, does that concern you at all?
You know what? I'm in literally daily contact with folks in the military on all branches, all services, certainly those at Fort Bliss. Yeah, here's another piece of information. This week, just a few days ago, Kelly Air Force Base, formerly Kelly Air Force Base, is going to be where they're going to be flying Libyans back to Libya. So, I mean, and that's also in my district. So whether it's out in Fort Bliss, whether it's out in San Antonio, Texas has really been ground zero for this border crisis, not only during the last 4 years, but I would argue the next 4 years. And so it's very important that we get reimbursed for some of the funding that we've had to pay out of pocket. And it's also important that our bases are utilized to make sure that they're ready to fight and win wars, not just this border crisis.
Let's talk about the tariffs. The first ship carrying Chinese products facing 145% tariffs. They're going to be arriving here at U.S. ports here very shortly this month. Texans are about to see a hike in prices, is what many businesses say. Do you expect that we're also going to see empty shelves?
I hope not. And this worries me. I mean, Texas, you know, our number one trading partner is Mexico. I know you mentioned China, but our number one trading partner is Mexico. You just look to the neighbor to the south. And so I want fair trade. I think when you see some of the imbalance that the president put out on how, you know, these other countries have tariffs on us, that's not fair. I want fair trade, but at the end of the day, it's a very delicate situation. I just traveled to Japan a few weeks ago. We have a lot of facilities in Texas, Toyota plants and other facilities. And I tell you what, it was a very cold reception that I got by the Prime Minister of Japan, which you normally don't get. So I think not only are our adversaries concerned, our allies are equally concerned. We got to make sure that we get this right.
Congressman, good to see you again. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Jason.
Last weekend's municipal elections here in Texas had low turnout, but the Texans who did vote sent some clear messages on school bonds across the state and school board races in Tarrant County. Brian Mays is a longtime political consultant who has run many campaigns and helped pick apart these results with us. Brian, welcome back. Let's start in Tarrant County. Republicans lost 11 of the 11 seats there. What is this all about? You know, Tarrant County is a red county, I would say.
Well, actually, I think it's because Republicans voted in a May election. And you're talking about the school board races.
Sure.
And I think for the first time in a long time, Republican voters, Republican families came out and said, first of all, these aren't Republicans, these are libertarians. Their stated goal is to try to bring down public schools. And families need good schools. It's the most important thing you can do for the long-term success of your community. And this time they voted, and they voted in big numbers.
Well, is this reflective of the schism, the division inside the GOP? And does it suggest anything about 2026?
Well, I just think that, I like to call the libertarian wing of the party the carnival barkers. They can only continue to throw out so much nonsense, and voters get smart. So, yeah, I do think this is going to have an impact on future elections in that Republican voters are smart, the parents are smart, they're listening to what these people are saying about schools, and they're realizing none of it's true. And what you found out Saturday, they got out and voted, and they voted them out.
School bonds, we talked about a lot here. Salina passed a $2.3 billion school bond. There were 89 of them across the state. Most of these passed. Does that send a message to lawmakers, especially after they approved school vouchers this session?
If lawmakers don't see that in the state of Texas that 80% of school bonds pass this time, which is almost a record rate, and if they're not paying attention to this and seeing that voters are telling them you need to start making schools a priority again, you can only cut funding so much, and local taxpayers and voters, they're going to vote to make up the difference. It wasn't just Salina. Melissa passed a $850 million bond. Mesquite passed a $600 million bond. These bonds passed, we're talking passed in landslide margins. I think this sends a very strong message to Austin. It's take care of our schools.
There's a bill in the legislature right now that you and I have talked about to move local elections from May to November. This has been talked about a lot of times in the past. The House is going to consider it next. The Senate has already passed this. But as someone who has run a number of local campaigns in May, you said something the other day that struck me, and that is, even though there is very low turnout for May, it is a very educated voter going to the polls.
Very much so. It's and depending on the community, it's very Republican. So this idea that they're going to move elections to November and they think that they're going to try to change, they're doing it because they want to change the outcome of bond referendums.
How so?
Well, in their mind is they'll make it a partisan issue, okay? And if you move anything to November, in an even year, it becomes a partisan issue.
Sure.
But we have seen our school bonds that we work on, they pass by the same big margins or even bigger in November, whether it's an odd or even year.
So at the end of the day, is this going to pass, do you think? Is this going to are local elections finally going to go to November?
I hope not. I don't want to see school bond referendums become partisan. I don't want to see races for mayor and city council become partisan. We see enough of that in Washington, right? I think we need to, I hope they keep them in May, but if they do, campaigns just get a lot more expensive.
Good insight, Brian. Thanks, man.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
The roundtable is ready here when we come back. All right, time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. Bud Kennedy is back with us from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Ashley Godot with us, political director at KVUE in Austin, and Natalie Haddad, political reporter at WFAA in Dallas. Bud, let's start with you. 3 weeks left in the legislature here. Several really big issues have yet to be hammered out. THC ban, bail reform, and the lottery future. Are these going to make it, or are some going to end up on the sidelines?
Well, and I think some of that's intentional, Jason. I think the House is slow walking some of those, and that the THC may not get done. The THC laws may stay as they are. I don't know if they can get that to conference and get it done. The lottery is a big decision. I don't know if they can get that through. The governor definitely says they have to get bail reform.
Yeah, but the lottery is one that has to be decided too. Actually, let me ask you about bail reform too, because Governor Abbott is blaming Democrats for that here. Patrick, though, the Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has even hinted at forcing a special session if this doesn't pass.
Yeah, and we've actually seen the Lieutenant Governor force a special session before. It was, several sessions ago, but he really showed his hand there that he is not above withholding. In that case, it was sunset legislation that had to pass in order to keep state agencies running. He held on to that bill, and let's be clear, the House helped him out because they waited to send it over to the Senate, but he helped that bill to force a special session, and we saw a number of conservative priorities get passed during that special. And so he's kind of hinted that he would do the same thing again if the THC ban that he wants isn't passed. And we should know what the House passed, completely different from what the Senate wants.
Yeah, they're completely different indeed. But Natalie, the sleeper in all this is House Bill 2, the big marquee public school funding bill that Speaker Burrows told us he was most proud of. It passed the House, but is still sitting in the Senate. What happens if that doesn't pass?
I think I think that lawmakers are going to have to really watch themselves when it comes to the vote in 2026, especially from teachers and parents alike. We're talking about an $8 billion piece of legislation that has to do with raising the student allotment, with teacher pay raises, increasing funding for students with disabilities. There is a lot on the line here, and I think that heads may roll.
Is there a chance, though, that doesn't pass, do you think?
Bud said something a moment ago that kind of stuck out to me. Sometimes it's calculated, something I see often online from Republicans and Democrats alike who are hoping to get HB2 across the finish line, is that Governor Greg Abbott was so quick to get his school vouchers. Now it's time to focus on public education.
Ashley, let's talk about the other big news at the Capitol. It seems every Republican is talking about the re-election campaign team that Senator John Cornyn has assembled here. It's a lot of big names in there.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to the fight that Senator Cornyn thinks he's going to have to put up. We have some former Trump staffers, some former staffers for Governor Greg Abbott, just some really big names in terms of the Republican campaign world that are going to be working on, his re-election campaign. I also think what's interesting about those names, though, is that I think that there's going to be a line in the sand, if you will, within the Republican Party between the Cornyn Republicans and the Paxton Republicans, and it's going to be interesting to see who can pull out the victory.
Yeah, and this really sends a message, Bud, at the end of the day, I think, to everyone. Well,
he is the serious campaign. That's what he's trying to project.
Yeah.
He's got Vincent Harris in his technical. Vincent Harris said the man who invented the Republican internet.
Final word here, Natalie.
Oh, gosh. Is that a final word?
No,
Oh, gosh.
on the Cornyn team, though. I mean, it is significant news.
I think it is significant news. And I think it also shows where Paxton lies in this race. Skeletons do eventually come out of the closet.
We'll let you leave us with that here. Natalie, thanks for being here. Ashley, always good to see you too. Bud, thanks a lot. We appreciate you watching as well. We're back next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics. We hope to see you there. Take care.